Straight ahead on Law and Crime Daily. Gabby Petito's autopsy results revealed.
In the manner of death of Gabrielle Lenora Petito, we find the cause and manner to be death by strangulation, and manner is homicide.
The latest in her death from the Teton County coroner, plus convictions in the college admission scandal. The fate is sealed in the first trial of the so-called Operation Varsity Blues. And later, looking ahead to the jury selection in the trial of Ahmaud Arbery's murder. We'll bring you up to speed ahead of next week's trial. Law and Crime Daily, covering court cases from coast to coast. Welcome everyone to Law and Crime Daily. I'm Brian Buckmeyer along with Terry Austin. Our questions are finally getting some answers as the Teton County coroner reveals Gabby Petito's cause of death was strangulation. The 22-year-old died in Wyoming this August. Her body was found several weeks later. Law and Crime's Anjanette Levy is here with more on the final autopsy results just released.
Brian, Dr. Brent Blue, he's the coroner out there in Teton County, Wyoming. He had already determined that Gabby Petito's death was a homicide, but now he says the cause of death was strangulation, and he said that actually took some further investigation. Now, law enforcement, you'll recall, found Petito's body near a campground at the Bridger-Teton National Forest on September 19th. An autopsy was conducted 2 days later, but the coroner did not release the cause of death at that time. Dr. Blue announced his findings at a press conference via Zoom and said Petito's body had been outside for 3 to 4 weeks, they determined.
That we were very exacting in our examination and the detail by which that examination was done. We were waiting for various specialists to come in and help us with this investigation. We were waiting on toxicology to be returned, and it was just a matter of making sure we had everything right. This autopsy included a whole body CAT scan, a examination by a forensic pathologist, an examination by a forensic anthropologist, and toxicology evaluation. So we pretty much covered all the bases.
And that was Dr. Blue explaining why it took them a little longer to determine the cause of death and release that. Now, the attorney for Brian Laundrie, who is Gabby Petito's former fiance, he released a statement right after the press conference, Steve Bertolino, telling us that Gabby Petito's death at such a young age is a tragedy. And he says that right now, Brian Laundrie is only charged with misusing a debit card. He says he is only a person of interest in Gabby Petito's death. So Brian Laundrie remains on the run at this time. No one seems to know where he is. Brian?
Thanks, Anjanette. Meanwhile, the manhunt for Petito's fiance, Brian Laundrie, moves forward as internet sleuths say he's hiding at his parents' house. Laundrie has been missing for nearly 1 month after he told his parents he was going hiking in a Florida reserve. He left his family home without a cell phone or wallet. The FBI has since confirmed Laundrie was being surveilled before he went missing. TikTokers online now claim Laundrie is hiding out in an underground bunker beneath his parents' property, saying drone video shows the entrance hidden underneath some flower beds. The Laundrie family attorney rebutted claims that Brian is at the family home in the past weeks, saying in part, quote, the speculation that the parents assisted Brian in leaving the family home or in avoiding arrest is just wrong. Law enforcement investigators have also visited his family home multiple times since the manhunt began. Laundrie is wanted on debit card fraud charges in connection to Petito's homicide. Joining us today is criminal defense attorney Bernardo Villalona and Terry Austin. Bernardo, with a cause of death, we are likely to see murder charges. Now, if the prosecution believes this was premeditated, murder 1. If this was in the heat of the moment, potentially manslaughter. What do you think the prosecution will do?
So in regards to, because Gabby Petito, her cause of death was determined to be strangulation, I believe the prosecution, when they are ready to file these charges, they are going to charge Brian Laundrie, if he's the person who actually killed Gabby Petito, with murder in the first degree, and in the alternative, probably murder in the second degree. I doubt that they would charge him with manslaughter, being that he committed this in the heat of passion, because when you're talking about strangulation, strangulation is intimate. Strangulation takes time. You don't kill someone by strangulation in an amount of seconds. It takes actual minutes of applying pressure to cut off airflow as well as blood flow. And that goes to tell you that it was intentional and that it was premeditated, because at any point he could have stopped, but he didn't.
Now, Terry, what now? What does this mean for the search of Laundrie? Do you think he or his family heard the report and this will only make it harder to find him?
Well, let's just hope it means that there is going to be an increased sense of urgency to find him. We knew already that this was homicide. The coroner confirmed today that it was caused by strangulation. It has to be, obviously, Laundrie. He was the last person with her. And although the authorities are not reclassifying him as a quote-unquote suspect, it has to be a reason for that. Perhaps they just don't want to let on that they have more information. But absolutely, they're going to be looking for him high and low everywhere.
Now, Angela, what's this about TikTokers believing Brian is hiding in a bunker? And what's the family attorney saying about that?
Well, you know, the family attorney has maintained that the parents don't know where Brian Laundrie is. A bunker under the flower bed, you know, that's been on TikTok. You see people talking about this. I think that's highly unlikely, and a lot of people have debunked that. In Florida, a lot of homes don't even have basements. So an underground bunker just conveniently being under a flower bed, that would be quite a stroke of luck for somebody who's trying to hide out from law enforcement. So, you know, you would think that you saw them back in the shed through some of the aerial video, the shed in the backyard. I'm thinking they probably would have known if there was an underground bunker there.
Absolutely, and the search continues for Brian Laundrie. On to more top legal news. It's a trial more than 3 decades in the making. 37 years after Janelle Matthews went missing, her accused murderer will stand trial. 70-year-old Stephen Pankey was indicted by a grand jury more than a year ago for the death of 12-year-old Janelle Matthews. Matthews went missing in December 1984 after returning to her Greenlee, Colorado home from a Christmas concert. In 1994, Matthews was declared legally dead before her remains were discovered in July 2019. It was then that her cause of death was revealed as a gunshot wound to the head. Pankey, who previously ran for governor of Idaho, was a person of interest in the case. At the time of her disappearance, he lived just 3 miles away from Matthews' family home. He also was a pastor at her church. His former wife told investigators that in the days following the disappearance, Pankey showed an uncharacteristic interest in Matthews' case. Pankey's trial began last Wednesday with jury selection. It's expected to last 5 weeks, ending on November 5th. And in South Dakota, a woman is charged in a 40-year-old cold case with the death of her infant son. So-called baby Andrew was found dead on the side of the road in February 1981 near Sioux Falls, South Dakota. A driver pulled over to find the infant wrapped in blankets and nearby clothes covered in blood. An autopsy found the baby was born alive, but likely died of exposure. For decades, baby Andrew and his mother's identity remained a mystery until recent DNA testing confirmed 60-year-old Teresa Benzos was the mother. On Friday, Benzos entered an Alford plea, meaning she accepts a guilty plea for a manslaughter charge but doesn't admit to the crime. Sentencing is set for December 2nd. Benzos faces a maximum sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole. Still ahead on Law and Crime Daily, a trial more than a year in the making set to begin next Monday. What you need to know ahead of the trial of the murder of Ahmaud Arbery. But first, convictions handed out in the first Operation Varsity Blues trial. How long some parents could face behind bars in the college admission scandal.
Hi, this is Dan Abrams with exciting news for all of our Law and Crime followers on YouTube. You can now get the live Law and Crime Network with YouTubeTV for all of your daily live trial coverage, legal news, expert analysis, and original true crime programs. Subscribe to YouTubeTV today and then locate Law and Crime in the channel guide. And for only $1.99 a month, you can add the network to your bundle. Watch Law and Crime every day with YouTubeTV. We put you in the jury box.
Welcome back. The first 2 people stood trial in what federal investigators dubbed Operation Varsity Blues, an admissions scheme where parents funneled millions of dollars to have their children admitted into some of the country's top universities. William Singer, a former businessman and college admissions consultant, pled guilty to 4 charges in connection to the crime, including racketeering. Singer has been cooperating with federal investigators since 2018. Singer would bribe coaches, test proctors, and administrators from universities in order to let students in. Cases started coming to light when it was discovered that actress Lori Loughlin and Felicity Huffman participated in the scheme. On Friday, former casino executive Gamal Abdullah and private equity financer John Wilson were the first 2 people from a list of over 50 parents, coaches, and test administrators to stand trial for Operation Varsity Blues. Both men were accused of paying large sums of money in order to have their children admitted into universities as recruited athletes. Abdullah and Wilson were both convicted on charges of conspiracy to commit bribery and fraud. Wilson was also found guilty of additional fraud and bribery charges. Both face up to 20 years behind bars. Let's bring back criminal defense attorney Bernardo Villalona and co-host Terry Austin to break down Operation Varsity Blue. Terry, 47 of 57 defendants charged have pled guilty or agreed to do so. Do you think these latest convictions will cause more holdouts to change their tune?
Absolutely. The writing is on the wall. I don't think the rest of these individuals are going to hold out too long. The prosecution is pursuing this with a vengeance. And don't forget, they have Rick Singer, who is the mastermind. He's cooperating fully. He even wore a wire for the FBI. So if it's any indication to the remaining individuals who are accused, I think that they will follow suit and they will probably plead guilty at this point.
All right, Bernardo, sentencing isn't until February. What do you think the appropriate punishment here is, and how much time do you think these 2 will serve?
So in regards to what's the appropriate punishment, obviously what I think should happen in this case, they've been found guilty by a jury of their peers. So I think because there was no acceptance of responsibility, that there should be some jail time compared to those that actually pled guilty. Also, you got to think, what is the purpose of sentence? You want to deter further conduct like this from taking place. So you have to send a message, and the way you send that message is through the sentencing, so everyone can be deterred as to carrying out these types of actions ever again.
Absolutely. There are plenty of colleges around the country. There are plenty of people doing the right thing, I would say, in terms of getting into those. And especially myself as a former college athlete, I know a lot of people who were athletes and worked hard to get into some of these schools are absolutely disgusted by this. So I can only imagine how this judge or other judges will hand out the sentencing. We'll, of course, keep an eye on that and let you know when it comes up. This week on Law&Crime Network, Brian Ross investigates, digs into the Tennessee walking horse abuse scandal. We turn now to Chief Investigative Correspondent Brian Ross for a look at this week's episode. Brian?
Thanks, Brian. Coming up this week on Brian Ross Investigates, a disturbing story about the people who train those famed Tennessee walking horses, using pain and torture to get them to step even higher.
Very few of those cases get prosecuted. I mean, it's, a small percentage of them wind up having any penalty at all. In fact, they would joke about it sometimes. They didn't really seem to be bothered that we would write up a federal case. In fact, there were some trainers that had 30, 40, maybe more cases written against them and had yet to have any penalty.
That's coming up this week on Brian Ross Investigates on the Law&Crime Trial Network. Brian?
Thanks, Brian. You can watch Brian Ross Investigates at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time on Tuesdays and Thursdays on the Law&Crime Network. Coming up on Law&Crime Daily, we head to Georgia where 3 men will stand trial for the death of an unarmed black man, Ahmaud Arbery. Plus, the United States versus Elizabeth Holmes, whose testimony jurors hear as week 6 of the federal trial begins. Welcome back to Law&Crime Daily. Tuesday marks the start of week 6 in the federal trial of Elizabeth Holmes. Court reconvenes with a former grocery store chain CEO on the stand, testifying that Theranos didn't hold up to its end of the bargain in a $300 million partnership. Former Safeway CEO Steve Bird told jurors the Theranos blood test had multiple problems during a 2012 partnership, including lost samples, temperature control issues, and, quote, results that didn't make any sense. Byrd also detailed emails he sent to Holmes that same year saying he was, quote, becoming discouraged after Theranos missed multiple deadlines and produced mixed results. Last week, Byrd testified that Safeway poured more than $300 million into clinics in hundreds of grocery stores across the country as part of a blood testing partnership with Theranos. Holmes faces 12 counts of fraud after claiming her now-defunct company, Theranos, would revolutionize blood testing. Tests later revealed the device had many issues and produced varying results. And in Connecticut, a 22-year-old stands trial for the stabbing and murder of her grandmother and her grandmother's boyfriend. Soaking wet with water and blood is how an officer described Harley Swolls when they arrived at the scene of the crime. The officers responded to a call from a neighbor who reported disturbing sounds coming from the home. Victims 63-year-old James Bell and 72-year-old Mary Rach were found with multiple stab wounds to their necks and backs. Swolls is charged with 2 counts of murder in connection with the stabbing, but is claiming self-defense. Swolls had previous misdemeanor charges for assaulting the elderly and breaching peace. The judge held her on a $1 million bond and put her on a mental health watch. On to other top legal news. A Pennsylvania woman says she's being framed for the murder of her elderly father and his girlfriend. This after her father recently removed her from his will. 55-year-old Sherry Lee Heffernan told the court she was not guilty last Friday during an extradition hearing. Officials in Surf City, New Jersey say Heffernan fatally stabbed her 87-year-old father and her 75-year-old girlfriend in late September. Officials argue that Heffernan, a real estate agent, was angry when her father listed his house with another agent. They also claim Heffernan referred to her father's girlfriend as a, quote, gold digger and blamed her for being removed from her father's will. Heffernan remains in custody without bond. And a grand jury officially indicts 18 former NBA players and the spouse of one of the players with conspiracy to commit healthcare fraud and aggravated identity theft. The indictment alleges that these players cheated nearly $4 million out of the league's healthcare plan. The supposed fraudulent claims involve the National Basketball Association's Players' Health and Welfare Benefit Plan. The indictment goes on to say that former Nets player Terrence Williams, quote, orchestrated the scheme to defraud the plan, saying that he recruited other participants to defraud the plan by supplying them with fake invoices to support their false claims. All of this was in exchange for money kickbacks given to Williams. When we come back, the trial will soon be underway for the murder of Georgia man Ahmaud Arbery. We'll take you back to where it all started, bringing you up to date ahead of next week's jury selection. All that and more after this. Welcome back. Jury selection is underway in the trial of 3 former Georgia deputies accused of murdering a man with a stun gun. Henry Lee Copeland, Rhett Scott, and Michael Howe face an 8-count indictment stemming from the 2017 death of Uri Martin. According to reports, the former deputies responded to a call about a suspicious person. Martin was unarmed at the time. The deputies stunned him with a taser. He then had breathing problems and died after succumbing to a heart attack. This week's trial comes after several indictments dating back to 2017. An original indictment was thrown out after it was revealed that a court reporter was not present during the process. The deputies were again indicted in 2018, but the charges were dropped in 2019 when a judge granted them immunity. In 2020, the Georgia Supreme Court threw out that immunity ruling, allowing the deputies to be tried for Martin's death. The trial, including jury selection, could take up to 3 weeks. Also in Georgia, jury selection will soon begin in a trial nearly 2 years in the making, as 3 men are charged with the murder of Ahmaud Arbery. On February 23, 2020, 25-year-old Ahmaud Arbery went for a jog in his Brunswick, Georgia neighborhood. That's when Travis McMichael and his father, Gregory McMichael, chased Arbery down in their pickup truck and shot Arbery 3 times. It took 3 months for the father and son to be arrested in May of 2020, despite there being video evidence of the shooting. The neighbor who recorded the video, William Rody Bryan Jr., was later arrested in connection to the shooting. Gregory McMichael was a former police officer who worked directly with the district attorney, Jackie Johnson, as an investigator. A voicemail from McMichael to Johnson shows the father asking for help, telling the DA he was involved in a shooting. Johnson, who turned herself in last month, is accused of showing favor to former co-worker Gregory McMichael and improperly blocking the arrest of his son, Travis. She was indicted for charges in obstructing a police officer and violating her oath of office. Jury selection begins on Monday, October 18th, for this anticipated trial. Bernardo, it took 3 months for the McMichaels and Brian to be arrested, and in 3 weeks, the trial could all come to an end after all evidence is presented. How do you think the prosecution will open this case?
So the prosecution is going to have to open up this case very strong, and they have to open up the case very strong in terms of that they have to try all 3 defendants together. They have to tie them all together because you want to get a conviction as to all 3 of them. In for a penny, in for a pound. They have to start with the injuries and then start giving a timeline of how this took place and how it actually ended, because they are charged with malice murder as well as felony murder. And they have to be able to negate any defenses that they have, such as justification or doing a citizen's arrest.
Now, Terry, the video by Brian broke this case. Does this case start and end with that video, or is there more here?
Well, the video is definitely going to play an important part in this trial. It is actual evidence, and the jury is going to be able to see what exactly transpired. So that's going to be key. But there's other evidence that's going to be key as well. So, for instance, the prosecution is already arguing that they should be able to get that license plate that had the Confederate emblem in, and we'll see what happens to that argument. The defense is also trying to get in some of Ahmaud Arbery's prior record and also the fact that he had mental illness. The judge has already said, no, that's not coming in. One, you did not know about his prior record when this all occurred. And 2, the mental illness didn't have any part to do. So we'll see what happens, but there'll be lots of evidence in this case.
All right, thank you both, and thank you for joining us here on Law and Crime Daily. We'll see you next time as we discuss justice in America.